thanks everybody. I'm Fabrizio Varriale, analyst at RICS. I'm member of the steering group that overlooks the BECD development. BECD is the Built Environment Carbon Database, which I'm here to talk about and give an update on our progress, but also with this presentation, I'm going to give you an overview of what BECD is, the concept, kind of the background, how it works, and where we are. You can see there on the right side, the partners in the BECD consortium, let's say. These are all represented in the steering group that's overlooking the development. And then we have the two working groups that are looking at the two parts of the database. Just want to say that this is really a pan-industry initiative. It's effectively been initiated by RICS and BCIS, but now everybody is really on board with this. So I will proceed next. Just to give a bit of background, in 2020, the idea was kind of bounced around RICS Europe and also I think Cambridge University. We had a workshop with industry representatives to understand the needs in terms of carbon data. And then later, in 2021, RICS brought together major UK professional bodies and organizations to collaborate on an industry-led database of emissions for the UK built environment. And just to give a bit of background, we as RICS, previously we had ownership of the embodied carbon database, which we had previously inherited from something that the Waste Resource and Action Programme put up. Now that's been dismissed because it will be entirely replaced by BECD. So the objectives of BECD is to establish the official UK repository for whole life carbon data on the built environment. This means that it will help harmonizing and streamlining reporting practices. It will increase the availability of free data. It will also increase transparency and data quality for all the data. And we are working on this in alignment with the professional statement, the current version and the update. And that's mainly why we are focused on the UK, but also together with the net zero carbon building standard. So the concept of BECD, a key point is that a data repository, not an assessment tool. So we're not stepping on the toes of those companies that have assessment tools. We are just a place to collect all the data that comes from assessment and bring it together and share it. This means that it will be important to have a capability to import and export data to and from existing software application. It will work through a basic account, which means it's free for everybody, used to report and retrieve carbon data. We are just now designing the pro account effectively, which will be used to do some advanced filtering and benchmarking. But it's important to remember that the raw data, everything that we gather will always be free to access for everybody. And BECD is really two different, entirely separate database sections. One is looking at assets or projects. These are both buildings and infrastructure, and we are covering both embodied and operational carbon. So it's whole life carbon. And the other section of the database looks at products. So effectively, we want to bring together environmental product creation, but all the other product lifecycle assessments that exist out there and that are relevant to the built environment. When it comes to the asset section, just a very brief idea of how this works. Again, it covers both and embodied and operational carbon. As a user, you'll be able to kind of track your projects. As you upload different assessments done at different stages, you'll be able to look at that. Again, you'll be able to manually enter the data, but also semi-automatically import it from tools if you use that. You'll be able to share a project between users so that different professions can input different parts of the data. There will be a kind of a little dashboard to do a bit of project analysis and comparison. And obviously, you'll be able to export your own data as well as the totality of the data. And just to give an idea, the basic structure on how this works, you create an asset. There's a number of metadata associated with that asset, so the asset information. And then together with that, you associate an indefinite number of assessments, which will contain assessment information and then information on materials, embodied carbon, and operational energy and carbon. And so you can see you can build that information over the life cycle of a project entirely. When instead we're looking at the product section, this works in a really different way. It's effectively a catalog of existing LCA for construction products. We're not going to replicate information or produce new information that's out there, but we're just going to bring it together in a kind of an easy way to look at it in the same place. It will store just the basic information that's there about each LCA record, so not, for example, not the full documentation that's within an EPD. The user will just effectively search with records through a keyword and also using filters. They will be also able to input a new record. That means that it could be a manufacturer that wants to flag up that they have a new EPD, or it might be an academic that has done an LCA for a paper, for example, and it might be an estimate that has been done by a professional. And that means that we really focusing on bringing together different sources. And that means bringing together the EPDs that are digital and are now available on EcoPortal, other EPDs that are kind of here and there on the web, the inventory of carbon and energy database benchmarks, as well as, again, as I said, academic LCA, professional LCA, as well as paid databases like DRE Impact, for example. We'll be able to list, signpost, and show that there are records in that database that cover certain products. And just finally, to say something about the status and the timeline, we started work in last year, putting together the working groups that kind of really started from scratch, in a sense. We started then software development last year as well. We had a first consultation on the asset section in June, and then we had just one now finished. And the current plan is to launch a fully functional, although it won't have all the functions that we planned for it, a database in April 2023, and that will be both for the asset and for the product section. And that's the end of the presentation, but I would want to give you just a very quick sneak peek into the actual database, if that works. So you should be able to now still see, this is what you see. It's effectively what is called the UAT. The developers are working on it, and they progressively update. So it's the most updated version, even more up to date than what was used for the beta version that was used in the last consultation. So it's still very much in design, but at least I can show you kind of the very basics. Obviously, it works as a normal portal. You have an account, you sign up, and then you see that there's here a menu with my assets and product DB. This stands in for the product database, which is, if it's loading, still in a very kind of patchy format, but you can see effectively we have imported here all the records from EcoPortal, and we're now starting to build to import more data sets in here, and it works through a basic search function, and then you can filter the data. I think it might be more interesting to look at the assets, where these are my assets that I created that all test with TAMI data. You can then go in, and you see this is the asset information page, where you see what the name is, you put in the URPN, you put in a number of things like the date, if it's part of a larger development. Clearly here you put in what type of building it is, or infrastructure, what type of project it is, location. And then once you've created this, then you can start adding a new assessment. And that means you'll be able to add a more information. So maybe I'll use another existing one where there's already created. No, let's see. Otherwise, I can create one very quickly. Yeah, so we got one already created for this project. There is a number of information, quite a few that are associated with the assessment in this case. And so, for example, one of that is the project stage, and that's based on the RIBA stages. There's obviously dates, detail of what the embodied carbon assessment is including or not, details of the assessor, things like the size of the project, GIA, et cetera. Then we got another section here on the type of materials that are included that, and this is more to classify buildings not only by type, by project type, but also the type of technologies that they used. And then you have a page to enter your materials and embodied carbon information. And this is still being redesigned, but it's effectively fairly similar to the kind of matrix structure that you see in the professional statement, where you have life cycle stages in the columns and the RICS and RM categories in the rows. And you can unlock these rows to editing. You can enter the data here, but then you can also add materials within each row, so as like children objects. And we are improving on this, and we're also working on an easy way to kind of import a list this matrix from an Excel that you might have already done previously. So for example, if you've submitted to the GLA for planning application, you'll have your data in a certain format. We'll be able to take that Excel and fit in the data in here. And then there will be another bit. See here, we need to fix the navigation. There will be another bit here with the operational carbon page, but that's still empty, but we're essentially going to work with CIBSE to kind of align in the way they collect the data on that topic. And that's it in terms of what I wanted to show.